This video will go over the basics of transmedia and show how we might be able to use transmedia to help deepen understanding of an academic subject. So first of all, you might not have heard the word transmedia, but I bet you've experienced it. So for example, think of Harry Potter. Harry Potter started out as a book. But because of the rich world of Harry Potter, they've moved it into a whole bunch of other things. It's a movie. It's an amusement park. This is my nephew turning on the light up here with his magic wand at the amusement park. There's a whole bunch of games. There's video games like Harry Potter. I think this is Harry Potter Legos. There's action figures and trading cards. These each show a slightly different aspect or different experience of Harry Potter that come together to make a very rich experience. For example, we know that a lot of the time when we change books into movies, we can't just put the book in exactly as is. Books are really good at taking time to show detail, etc. And those details don't always come across as well or are harder to understand in a movie. But the action scenes in a movie are very powerful. So a lot of the time when we're converting a book to a movie, we have to slightly change the content to give a different perspective because the movie has different affordances from the book. So when we design transmedia, it's important to remember that different media forms have different advantages or affordances. They allow different things. And so the cool thing about a transmedia environment is it lets you pull on the affordances of a lot of different types of media to give a holistic picture. So you might be asking, what does this have to do with learning and academic content? Let me show you a couple brief examples. This is the Mount Vernon museum site. So this is about George Washington's Mount Vernon, and they have a whole bunch of different types of media forms here on their museum site. So they have a timeline. It's a timeline that goes across. It helps us put things in order. It's interactive, and that helps us understand in a certain way the American Revolution. We can, they have a Be Washington where you can actually become Washington in the interactive experience. If you go to the museum, there's different battle maps you can look at, there's stories, there's a movie. All these can come together to help us understand. It's almost like a museum in a website, although some of these actually are in the actual museum. Right here, this is the interactive plasma physics experience, and they have a whole bunch of different transmedia type pieces that come together to help us understand plasma physics. So this is an animated cartoon. This is like a virtual tokamak, which I don't even know what it is. Maybe I should be doing this to learn this. Here's the animated cartoon. You can kind of just see some screenshots, parts of that. They have some remote experiments where you can actually control something in the real world. You have where you can actually send a message to a plasma physicist and get information back. What's something new they might add these days is now that we have a lot of large language models, you can actually create an interactive language model that can chat to you as if it were a physicist. So that's something new, a new affordance that wouldn't necessarily require emailing someone. It could actually be done on the go. So those are some examples of some academic. So let's talk a little more detail though about what exactly makes something transmedia. So there's 3 characteristics that I want to focus on. Transmedia is multimodal, intertextual, and dispersed. So we're going to start with multimodal. That basically just means we're using a lot of different forms of media. We might use different texts, we might use different sounds, images, animations, video, interactive stuff, all kinds of stuff that we mix together to create a holistic learning experience. Within those types of media, we also have different genres. So it's not just that we have a video and an image. We have different types of videos, perhaps, that we can combine because each of them have different advantages that support learning in different ways. So, for example, like we know there's genres of a book. There's novels, biographies, comics, graphic novels, a coffee table book. They're each a little bit different and provide a different experience. Well, let's say we wanted to look at different genres within a video. We can make a video that's a presentation. We can make an explainer video. We can make a digital story, a TikTok type video, a first person like having a GoPro and going around and doing something and watching it on the GoPro. We choose what type of video we want based on what we want to communicate in the concept. And so that's again where we're using the affordances of the medium to express something specific to the content we want to share. Here's another example of affordances or possible actions when we think about coloring, right? I like to color. I'm a little weird that way, but we might like to color with colored pencils sometimes, with markers, with pens, with Sharpies. They all have different things they're good for. Colored pencils are really good for shading. That's an affordance of a colored pencil, whereas marker is a more bold, full color. So I'm going to choose which I'm going to use depending on what I want to accomplish. That's how we use multimedia or multimodal forms within a transmedia environment. The next characteristic is that it is intertextual. That basically means that each medium or each media form, they each communicate a unique content, and then they come together for a holistic experience. So in the Harry Potter example, we saw that if we go to the amusement park, we can understand the taste of butterbeer or the feeling of being in Hogwarts. Whereas if we're reading the book, it's more imagining that experience. Or if we're playing the video game, we can actually think about the rules of Quidditch and how that all works together. They're each communicating unique content, but they're coming together for a holistic experience. I want to show you a little bit of a different example. Now, these don't as much go to different mediums, but it gets to this intertextual idea that we can have for the Pythagorean theorem, we can represent it in different ways. And each way we represent it gives us a slightly different type of view on it. So there's the classic a squared plus b squared equals c squared that we could memorize the formula and how it works with the right triangle, but we could also demonstrate exactly what the squares actually mean. We can give examples of different triangles. And then this is one of my favorites. It's actually a video that shows this wheel. That's a media format that actually lets us experience and see visually the motion, the movement of how these two squares add up to make that square. So although these are all images, there are other things, interactive things you could do. They each portray a different part of the Pythagorean theorem, and that's what we mean by intertextual. All right, the next quality, so we had multimodal, intertextual, and now we have dispersed. And dispersed means that the ideas are spread across the media forms. We talked about this a little bit when we talked about multimodal. When we talked about how Harry Potter, you have tasting something, you have the action in the movie, you have the rules and actually playing Quidditch. The different ideas come through different media forms. So ultimately, transmedia, multimodal, intertextual, and dispersed. Now, just a couple more examples. This is maybe for like if we're looking at orbits of planets. We could have a physical model that has the planets that go around, and we can also have these different simulations. So, and even within these simulations, they're both interactions, but they're slightly different. They're slightly different. So this one is going to, if I remember correctly, it's loading. We got our cookies. It's going to show us a lot of details. Okay, so that's going to let us see a lot of details as to measurements and patterns across time. Whereas this one shows a slightly different aspect that is more about the actual orbits and the moons and such. So I can still choose dates, but it gives different information, even though it's the same basic concept or idea. That's another example. So when you're designing a transmedia learning experience, you're going to start with an idea. So let's say that my idea was to talk about the birth of stars. I start with thinking about what kind of elements could go into explaining that birth of stars. So maybe I have some type of presentation. Infographic seems like it would be really good for this because infographics show processes really well and they show relationships between steps. And animation might be really good because it pulls together all those pieces of how the star is formed that would be hard to show in real life. We might do a podcast where we tell different stories about stars, or maybe we interview someone, an astrologist who knows a lot about it. We can do all kinds of other things, games, comic strips, interactive models, star model. All these pieces can go together to give our learner a holistic view of that topic. So, takeaways, just to summarize, Transmedia, we combine different forms of media to represent an idea or a concept. Each media element presents a different angle or perspective of a core idea. And finally, the elements combine to give a holistic picture of the concept. Thanks for watching.